Learning about surviving desert combat, learning to hide in a barren environment.
They learn how to use wadis, for example, gullies, to move large distances undetected. They learn to move at night so that they're undetected. They learn to move in the shadows of the mountains so that they're undetected.
The environment sometimes your number one enemy, and being out here you learn how to conquer that, how to identify terrain features on a map that they all look the same to the naked eye.
Dealing with poison gas is a high priority here. Soldiers are outfitted with full protective gear and exposed to tear gas to simulate chemical weapons.
When a unit defends himself against our simulated chemical attack, it's the same as if real chemicals had been used.
In this place that resembles the desert of Saudi Arabia, troops believe the training they get may one day save their lives in a desert war.
This kind of training means to me that it learns me, this is my first time on how to survive in the desert without injuring myself. If I injure myself as a medic, I'm no good to anybody else. My job is to save lives.
About 70,000 troops are trained here to fight in the desert each year. The action takes place day and night in temperatures as high as 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Training officers say they know the troops will make mistakes here in the desert, but they hope the U.S. soldiers who may go fight in this kind of hostile climate overseas will have gotten the kind of experience they need to come back safe when the battle is done. Robert Vito, CNN, Fort Irwin, California.
We'll have a full report on the newest developments in the Gulf on Evening News Sunday in just 1 hour. Starting tomorrow, we'll bring you a daily half-hour special, Crisis in the Gulf, a CNN special report. That can be seen at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time tomorrow night. I'm Dave Michaels at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
I'm David French in Washington. Coming up now, an in-depth look at all of the events that shaped our world this week. It was quite a week in review.
Caddyshack Golf Shop Fort Dodge is Iowa's largest complete golf supply store. From golf cars to golf clubs, the Caddyshack is your one-stop golf shop. The Caddyshack builds custom-made golf clubs for less than half the cost of a name brand set. The Caddyshack will also regrip, repair, and refinish your old clubs. The Caddyshack services and sells all makes of golf cars. Plus, the Caddyshack offers the lowest prices in Iowa. The Caddyshack, east on Highway 20, where the coffee and quality are free.
Why settle for half the entertainment when you can get cable TV and have it all? Fill your screen with thrills, spills, chills, news, interviews. Call now, get Showtime blockbuster hits and movie exclusives, plus original shticks, stand-ups, and superstars too. It's great entertainment and only on cable TV.
You're a high school graduate. What's your next step?
I want a job with a better future.
You need help managing time, developing better business skills. Iowa Central Community College is your next step, offering courses that transfer or prepare you for career entry and customized training for you and your business.
With the convenience of Iowa Central's on-site daycare, I can pursue the career I really want.
And our career seminars give you extra training for your job. Look to Iowa Central Community College. It's your next step.
The Iowa Lottery proudly introduces Dream House, our new scratch game where you can win anything from 2 free tickets to prizes of $3, $5, $10, $20, $100, yes, even $500 instantly. And best of all, match the word entry 3 times and mail in your ticket for a chance to win $250,000. Enough to buy the home of your dreams. So play Dream House, because when opportunity knocks, you should be there to answer.
celebrating a decade of achievement. This is CNN.
Arab nations in the Western world unite behind the United States in protecting Saudi Arabia from Iraqi aggression.
The boycott of Iraqi oil sends prices soaring at the gas pump, but the finger is being pointed at American oil men as the reason why.
And Senator Sam Nunn, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, talks candidly with Catherine Cryer about U.S. troop readiness to deal with the Persian Gulf crisis.
All this and more in depth on The Week in Review, Sunday, August 12th, 1990.
Hello, I'm Bob Kane.
And I'm Susan Rook. For more than a week now, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein has been acting like the neighborhood bully in the Middle East.
First, by intimidating neighboring Kuwait with 100,000 troops on the border. Then invading that tiny country, toppling the government, installing a puppet regime, and then going so far as to actually annex Kuwait.
This week, as Hussein's forces edge closer to Saudi Arabia, the U.S. and many of its allies responded.
Since Iraq invaded Kuwait last week, President Bush has dodged any suggestion that the U.S. might get involved in the conflict militarily. But the president didn't have to decide. On Monday, Saudi Arabia's King Fahd asked for U.S. military help after Defense Secretary Dick Cheney showed him satellite photos clearly indicating Iraq's threat to the Saudis.
The king indicated to me that he felt his first priority had to be the safety and security of the people of Saudi Arabia. And that based upon the historic relationship of the United States and the government of Saudi Arabia specifically, he cited the meeting between his father, King Abdul Aziz, and President Roosevelt on the USS Quincy in 1945, and based upon their fundamental trust of the United States, they were prepared to ask for our assistance.
2 days later, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein stunned much of the Arab and Western world by announcing through a spokesman that he was annexing Kuwait.
Our fellow citizens, history has proved that Kuwait is a part of Iraq. Kuwaitis have always drunk from the water of Dijla and Furat, Euphrates rivers. Occupation, which had divided Arab world and brought in foreign influences, has led the Arab world to a very weak position and impeded its unity.
On the same day, President Bush announced he was sending troops to Saudi Arabia.
At my direction, elements of the 82nd Airborne Division, as well as key units of the United States Air Force, are arriving today to take up defensive positions in Saudi Arabia. I took this action to assist the Saudi Arabian government in the defense of its homeland. No one commits America's armed forces to a dangerous mission lightly, but after perhaps unparalleled international consultation and exhausting every alternative, it became necessary to take this action.
U.S. ground troops and warplanes began mobilizing for what the Pentagon codenamed Operation Desert Shield. Warplanes were dispatched from Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina and Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Air defenses included a squadron of 48 F-15 fighter jets.
In a one-to-one battle, there is, to my opinion, nothing that the Iraqis have that could stand up against an F-15. And it should be noted that we do have allies, such as the Saudis, that do in fact possess the F-15 aircraft.
Ground forces were dispatched from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and Fort Stewart, Georgia. Troops from Fort Stewart have been specially trained for desert fighting and chemical warfare. There were reports the Iraqis might equip their warplanes with chemical weapons. Hussein used chemical weapons against Iran during the Persian Gulf War and also against his country's own rebellious Kurdish minority. However, Iraq's ambassador assured CNN this week that his country would not use chemical weapons against U.S. forces.
If your troops confront American troops, will Iraq use poison gas and chemical weapons?
Let us hope not. We made it clear that all our preparation are for defensive purposes. We will never attack anyone, certainly not a great country such as the United States, unless we are attacked.
President Bush has warned Iraq it will be dealt with severely if poison gas is used.
I think any time you deal with somebody who has used chemical weapons on the battlefield, you are concerned about it. And I would think that he'd know that given the way the world views the use of chemical weapons, that it would be intolerable, and that it would be dealt with very, very severely.
General Colin Powell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says U.S. forces will be prepared if chemical weapons are used.
We have protective masks. We have overgarments that will protect the body from chemical contamination, and we have necessary medicines that will serve as antidotes.
In addition, 2 hospital ships are on the way to the Persian Gulf. On Wednesday, the USS Saratoga and 4 escort ships set sail from Mayport Naval Station in Florida. The battleship Wisconsin left Norfolk, Virginia to meet up with the Saratoga in the Mediterranean. If needed, the naval groups will reinforce warships already in the Persian Gulf. Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak granted permission for the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower to sail through the Suez Canal.
We call you for the holy war. Do not hesitate to do so.
On Friday, Saddam Hussein called for Arabs to rise up in a holy war against Saudi Arabia. But it appeared most Arab states were more interested in defending the Saudis than fighting them. During an Arab summit in Cairo, also on Friday, Mubarak and 11 other Arab leaders agreed to send troops to Saudi Arabia. President Bush hoped for a multinational force to restrain Iraq, and the Allies came through for him. Britain sent a jet squadron. France, Australia, West Germany, and America's closest neighbor, Canada, committed their ships.
Canada is not a superpower. We do not have the might and the reach of many others. Canada is, however, capable of making a contribution to the containment of aggression and to the defense of the integrity of nations, as we have done effectively throughout our history.
Israel, America's staunchest ally in the Middle East, promised to help out if needed.
It is clear that at this stage, the preference of the United States administration, of the U.S. government, is to try to initiate this effort of a blockade, of economic boycott of Iraq by other means and not involving Israel directly. But I think the administration knows extremely well, the president, the administration in the United States knows extremely well that Israel is available, is ready, as always, to assist the United States in fulfilling and complying with its strategic responsibilities. The United States knows that it has a very reliable partner in Israel.
By the same token, NATO agreed to help member country Turkey if Iraq threatened its borders. Earlier in the week, UN Security Council members slapped mandatory sanctions and an arms embargo on Iraq. In one of the week's more surprising developments, East Germany, Switzerland, and Japan agreed to support the embargo.
Decision was made sort of out of our own consideration. It was the outright invasion of a foreign country, and I think we consider that it is important that we, Japan, act along with other countries like the United States to correct the situation.
By week's end, it was clear that a growing economic and arms embargo threatened to choke off Iraq, but it wasn't clear if Saddam Hussein would strangle or struggle on. President Bush appeared to feel the situation was enough under control to take a scheduled 3-week vacation at his seaside home in Kennebunkport, Maine, but it clearly will be a working vacation. For the Week in Review, I'm David French in Washington.
Coming up on the Week in Review, crisis in the Persian Gulf threatens economic chaos around the world.
Already, stock markets are plummeting and gas prices soaring as profiteers get into the mix.
Week in Review is brought to you by Apple Computer. Macintosh has the power to change the way you feel about computers. The power to be your best.
How's your flight? Better than the cab ride.
Yeah, okay. Can you send us down to finance now? Okay, hold on. I'm sending it.
5 minutes. I'm online with Chicago. It's strange. What is it? Your people.
What's wrong with them?
Not bad.
Can I get on here soon? Where'd you find all these computer people anyway?
What are you talking about?
I've got 24 PCs in my department, and my people hardly touch them. Yours actually stand in line.
You still don't get it, do you?
Get what?
You don't have the wrong people. You have the wrong computers.
The most powerful computer is the one people actually use. Macintosh, the power to be your best.
That can't be it. I gave them all 6 weeks of training.
The Infinity Q45. First your hand turns the wheel, then the wheel turns the shaft, which turns the pinion, which turns the rack, which turns a serious luxury sedan into a sports car on a joyride. There. So much for that little fork in the road.
Get your free Baseball in the 80s video with 25 issues of the sporting news for 3 payments of just $9.96. Save 46% off the cover price. Call now, 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257.
As tensions rise in the Persian Gulf, the world turns to CNN. Critics say CNN is impressive, groundbreaking, an invaluable resource. For live, continuous coverage of the crisis in the Gulf, stay with CNN.
No sooner had Iraq's Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, his little neighbor with so much oil, than prices on U.S. gas pumps spiraled upward.
Stocks nosedived on Wall Street, in London, and in Tokyo, and thriving industrialized countries brace for a possible recession.
The effects of the crisis in the Middle East are not confined to that region. They're felt around the world.
Saddam Hussein hadn't finished grabbing all of Kuwait before fast buck operators were grabbing money from the American consumers' pockets.
$1.50 a gallon? Like a week ago I was here and it was about 20 or 30 cents less than that.
Gasoline prices jumped 5 cents a gallon, then 10, then 15 in less than 2 days. And howls of outrage were heard from the neighborhood filling stations to the halls of Congress.
These high prices at the gas tank are killing us.
Our people are mad. Our people are angry. Our people are disgusted.
Oil company officials were hauled up to Capitol Hill to be chewed out by angry legislators.
Aren't you guys really trying to shove it to the American consumer?
President Bush, a former oil man himself, called upon the industry to cool it.
I'm asking the oil companies to do their fair share. They should show restraint and not abuse today's uncertainties to raise prices.
For some oil companies, the presidential arm twisting worked.
ARCO will indeed comply with President Bush's request to hold the line on oil prices. We are freezing our wholesale gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel prices for 1 week beginning today.
But the boost in oil prices had already set off a chain reaction in transportation and other industries dependent on oil and gas. Pan Am, American, and other airlines were charging passengers 10% more for tickets or tacking on surcharges to cover rising fuel costs.
I don't like it at all.
Well, as far as I understand, the oil that they're using has been in the United States for quite a long time. So it was paid for a long time ago. So there's no reason to jack up the prices.
Truckers paid more for diesel fuel.
They went up 3 cents Friday and then 8 more cents Saturday, I believe. 2 days in a row.
So truckers began increasing their own prices.
I mean, we end up having to charge more to haul our freight. People end up at the other end that we're hauling for, end up having to raise their prices of foodstuffs.
All of those dizzily spinning numbers on the gas pumps and ticket counters were reflected on the big board on Wall Street. Most stock prices plummeted, while oil stock went through the ceiling. Hectic activity on the Tokyo Exchange reflected Japan's almost total dependence on imported oil and the Japanese government's hard-nosed decision to join the embargo against Iraq and Kuwait. While Saddam Hussein's power grab shook up the industrialized world's economies, he failed to cause a panic. Wall Street and other markets recouped some of their losses as the embargo noose began to strangle Iraq's economy. Oil is Iraq's lifeblood, and Iraqi oil is ceasing to flow through the vital pipelines to the outside world. Almost entirely landlocked, Iraq must pipe its oil across Turkey to Mediterranean ports, or across Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea, or ship it through the dangerous waters of the Persian Gulf.
The circumstances are very, very favorable for it, because all of Iraq's seaborne trade has to come out through the Straits of Hormuz. And you can sit outside the straits and stop any traffic either to or from Iraq or any country.
U.S. warships and ships from other countries, including the Soviet Union, are in the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean. Iraq's tankers already at sea will have no place to unload their oil. Iraqi and Kuwaiti assets abroad have been frozen. Even traditionally neutral Switzerland has locked the economic door. With no money coming in from oil, Iraq can't continue to build up or supply its military forces, keep its oil fields productive, or even provide food and other basics for its people. Meanwhile, other oil-producing countries agreed to increase production to make up for the shortages. And the world's biggest oil producer, the Soviet Union, may soon be selling on the international market. U.S. production has slacked off since the oil crisis of the early 1970s. Oil producers urged the nation to adopt an energy policy featuring tax breaks, easing off offshore drilling restrictions, and the development of alternative fuel sources.
There are a host of steps, and quite frankly, in the long run, this country has to look at the question of whether we should continue to increase our dependence on a place like the Mideast.
That long run to oil independence may be considerably shortened by the actions of Iraq's Saddam Hussein. For the Week in Review, I'm Mary Ann Laughlin.
Coming up on the Week in Review, the state of U.S. troop readiness.
Senator Sam Nunn talks candidly with Catherine Cryer about U.S. troop readiness to deal with the crisis in the Persian Gulf.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, we stopped counting a long time ago. Call 1-800-242-5051 for your New Mexico vacation planner. 1-800-242-5051. This winter, come to the land of enchantment, New Mexico, USA.
You know it's time to show our pride, to let America shine.
At Walmart, our obligation is always to offer you the best values. Sometimes that means imported goods, but we've made it our policy to find more U.S. suppliers who can compete, because American goods mean American jobs. At Walmart, we pledge to support America's sources whenever we can, so you can too.
Bring it home to the USA.
If you could taste time, caring, dedication, if you could taste the sun, rain, fresh air, if you could taste tradition and pride, this is what it would taste like every time. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
A few short years ago, Georgia Pacific set out to become a world leader in the paper business. And though today we've soared to heights even beyond our imagination, we never forget. We're working for tomorrow. Georgia Pacific, savvy from the ground up.
This latest Persian Gulf crisis raises a lot of old questions concerning American military readiness.
Senator Sam Nunn of the Senate Armed Services Committee answered this question and others as he talked this week with CNN's Catherine Cryer.
our committee this year did rethink our strategy, and we geared our future force posture to a far different kind of requirements, a far different threat than we've had in the past. We adopted several different principles. One is that we would be much more of a reinforcement kind of posture in this country. We would have less forces abroad, forward deployed, and more at home. Two, that we would have forces that would be light, much lighter, easier to transport, but also lethal, and that's a tough combination. You can't get tanks around the world very quickly. We're going to have to use our technology to make forces lighter, more mobile, more flexible, and also, though, very lethal in ability, with an ability to deal with tanks when they arrive on the scene. We don't have that kind of posture now.
Now, you mentioned actually conducting airstrikes into Iraq itself. Under what circumstances would that reaction be appropriate?
I think we ought to tell them right now, clearly, that's what we're going to do. So the element of deterrence is what I'm looking for, but we have to be prepared to do it if deterrence fails, and they have to know we have the capability to do it to add to deterrence. What we want to do is avoid a war.
In discussing economic policy, war, whether you call it a declared war or this sort of military response, is usually a boon to the economy, particularly the industrial sector. How does this conflict factor now into our budgetary considerations?
I don't think this one is good news. I think this conflict comes at a time where America is already running a huge deficit. So in effect, if we have to finance a war, and God forbid, I hope we don't, we're going to have to borrow the money from the Japanese.
Some have commented that even if Saddam Hussein is dissuaded from this particular pursuit, and we see an Arab solution to this crisis, that we haven't heard the last from him, that he may have the ultimate goal of eliminating the state of Israel. And how do you feel about that?
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think that is his ultimate goal. He's not going to achieve that goal, but I hope he understands that soon rather than later after an awful lot of blood has been shed.
Hosni Mubarak, in comments made yesterday, seemed to somewhat criticize the Arab nation for not reacting to this threat earlier. And in this country as well, it seems we did not expect this sort of response from Hussein. Why the lack of preparedness, both in the United States and in the Arab world, to this threat?
I'm not sure why we have been slow to react, but the world did not condemn nearly strongly enough the inhumane use of chemical weapons by the Iraqis against the Iranians and against the Kurds, their own people. The world did not react nearly strongly enough to the invasion of Iran by Iraq, and that's understandable because the Iranians are so hard to like. We ourselves tilted very heavily towards Iraq. We were practically allies with them in their war against Iran when we should have been strictly neutral in insisting that both sides cease the aggression. The whole episode has been one of thinking that this man was not as dangerous as he obviously is. 2 days before the Iraqis invaded Kuwait, the Bush administration was lobbying the United States Senate not to impose sanctions on the Iraqi leader. We did pass that bill, but that shows you how quickly things change. I think he's been misjudged before. I hope he will not be misjudged again.
Was it somewhat naive of this country to believe that after supporting, to an extent, Iraq's efforts against Iran, that Hussein would not turn against that support?
I believe we misread him, and I think he misread us. The Iranians have caused us so much difficulty. We've got the hostage situation that still is a raw nerve to the United States. They are very difficult to deal with. But after all, he invaded Iran. And the world did not put that quite in the right perspective. We did not, nor did the other countries. I think that it's important now that the Arab leadership understand fully that this is not the end of his threat, that he has to be deterred now. We'll either pay the price now, deterrence, or we'll pay later, much higher price.
Senator Nunn, finally, if Hussein chooses not to move and to wait us out, are we in there for the long haul?
I think we're there for the long haul. I hope not with a whole lot of military forces on the ground. I think our air forces can fly in and out and can be a part of deterrent even if he moves out of Kuwait. I think we could continue to have air power into Saudi Arabia as long as they wanted us to, but I do not think it's in our interest to have a long-term, heavy ground presence there with thousands and thousands of American families. I think that could bring about the kind of outrage against Saudi Arabia because of that American presence that would cause them more internal problems than in the long run might even be a greater threat than Saddam Hussein. The Saudis have an awful lot of foreign nationals there doing the work. The Kuwaitis, for instance, were a minority in their own country because they had imported so many people to do the menial tasks there. That's sort of an artificial existence. The royalty itself is under attack, and I think the royalty in those countries is going to have to modify their own internal policies and give the average person out there a whole lot more to say about how their government goes in the future. If not, then this brutal tyrant will appeal to Arab nationalism, will appeal to populism, and will appeal to the natural human instinct to resent people who are enormously wealthy while other people are suffering in poverty.
Thank you, sir, for letting us come by and talk with you this afternoon.
Thank you.
All over the United States this week, Americans were talking about the crisis in the Persian Gulf.
Opinions may have varied, but one thing was very clear. Everybody had an opinion. Here's what some of you told us.
I think the most important thing really is that we get cooperation from the rest of the world and not go it alone.
I think it's highly premature. I think that's an Arab problem and they need to resolve it themselves.
Although I've heard President Bush saying we want to ensure that we defend Saudi Arabia because of our oil supply, I am concerned. I think we are putting people at jeopardy. People die during wars.
I don't believe in violence under any circumstances. I think violence begets more violence. I also don't believe in the idea of always interfering in other people's business.
Well, my personal belief is that those people should take care of their own problems. But I'm tired of the young American men getting killed. I'm a Vietnam veteran myself, and I wouldn't want to go through that again.
Well, our economy is based on a war economy, so it probably would help the economy. But if we went to war, but I don't want us to go to war. We've been there already.
Even psychologically, it's just enough to spook everyone. So I think it's a real problem.
We're the ones going to end up suffering. The people is going to suffer more than what's the name. The government is going to suffer. The people's going to want to be the one paying everything, paying the price for everything.
I think it's a wise move at this point. I think, unfortunately, something should have been done a long time ago when they first realized that Hussein was basically a threat. And he should have been taken care of and dealt with ahead of time.
We should be thinking about alternative energy sources, which we've had the capabilities for since the late 60s.
I don't think there'll really be that much of a problem either because they only have chemical weapons. If they had nuclear power, we'd really be in trouble, actually.
I think it's a wait-and-see situation, and hopefully we'll have the support of the rest of the countries behind us. I just don't want to see us, the United States, going in and turning into another horrible situation like Vietnam or something like that.
Coming up, U.S. Marines go into action in Liberia.
The Marine presence does not indicate or constitute any intention on the part of the U.S. government to intervene militarily in the Liberian conflict. We call on all parties in that conflict to ensure the safety of American citizens.
You've been staring out there all day. What are you doing?
Trying to figure out which computer is the most powerful.
Well, that's easy. The one with the most memory, megahertz, MIPS, you know.
No, I don't think so.
There we go.
I think the most powerful computer is the one that people actually use.
Macintosh has the power to change the way you look at computers.
But that's not really a fair comparison. People like using the Mac.
The street goes up, the street goes down. The Infiniti M30 luxury sports coupe reads the road like it wrote the book. The street goes down. The street goes up. And you settle back in the plush leather and go, this is fun.
You asleep?
No.
Thinking about the house?
Yes.
Sure we can afford it?
No.
Uptight?
Yes.
Buying a home can make you a little uneasy when you don't know what to expect. But if you get the new Best Buyer Guidebook from Coldwell Banker, we'll take you through every step from finding a home to financing it. So don't get left in the dark.
Is it going to be okay?
Call Coldwell Banker, the home sellers, a member of the Sears Financial Network.
A crisis in the Gulf threatens world peace. Tensions are running high, and the powder keg could explode at any moment. For the latest developments and how they will affect you, stay tuned for continuous live coverage only on CNN.
J2 Communications, Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Holmes, and Norton. 5 of the world's greatest heavyweight champions together for the first time in Champions Forever, the video. You'll relive their most thrilling moments in the ring and catch them with their gloves down.
I started getting in their face, looking them dead in the eye.
The men, the legends, the video. Champions Forever. Order Champions Forever now, and you'll also receive free this boxing glove keychain. It's made just like the real thing, and it's yours free when you order Champions Forever now.
For rush delivery of your Champions Forever video, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-257-1257 or send $19.95 plus $4 shipping and handling to Champions Forever, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia, or call 1-800-257-1257.
Celebrating 10 years of growth. This is CNN.
This has been an intense week for the U.S. military. Before American troops were even sent to the Middle East to check Iraq's Saddam Hussein, they went into action in Liberia on a rescue mission. Their orders, get all American citizens out before that West African nation plunged deeper into civil war.
For months, some 2,000 U.S. Marines waited off the coast of Liberia, closely watching developments in that war-torn African nation. Their mission to evacuate Americans if the Civil War got worse. It did, and they moved in.
Marines are there to protect lives. They are authorized to use whatever means are necessary to do that, and they are there in a battle situation.
The rescue order came after one rebel leader threatened to arrest all non-Liberians. More than 200 Marines flew into Liberia and shuttled dozens of Americans and their dependents to the USS Saipan helicopter carrier. It was called Operation Sharp Edge.
The purpose of this operation is to safeguard lives, to draw down the number of Americans at the embassy to minimum staff, and to provide additional security for those who remain.
More than 300 Americans remain in Liberia, and because of the heavy fighting centered in and around the capital, some may not be able to reach the evacuation point at the American embassy.
As we were coming out, there was still shooting in the city, and still a lot of very hardship, very much plenty of hardship among the people. Very distressing.
Much of Liberia looks like a slaughterhouse. Bodies of mostly unarmed civilians lie on the streets and in fields. Savage street battles rage daily in the Liberian capital of Monrovia. Battles between 3 separate factions. Armies loyal to rebel leader Prince Johnson and his rival Charles Taylor fight each other, and soldiers of the beleaguered President Samuel Doe. The rebels accuse Mr. Doe of human rights abuses.
The difficulty is this anarchy on the ground that they really don't know what to expect. And with these conflicting 3 factions that are warring with each other, they could find themselves in the middle of a crossfire very easily.
On Monday, Johnson carried out his earlier threat and took several people hostage in hopes the U.S. or other countries would intervene to help end the war. But by Wednesday, he had freed them all. Meanwhile, 5 neighboring West African countries prepared to send in peacekeeping troops to bring a halt to the bloodshed. But some rebels opposed the West African intervention and, as part of their plan to capture the capital before the West African forces arrived, attacked the Nigerian and Guinea embassies. Some Liberians were hoping that the Marines would step in to help end the war.
We are asking, because of the existing situation there, that the troops remain there and act as a peacekeeping force.
But the White House has made it clear that the U.S. has no intention of taking sides or getting involved militarily.
The Marine presence does not indicate or constitute any intention on the part of the U.S. government to intervene militarily in the Liberian conflict. We call on all parties in that conflict to ensure the safety of American citizens.
Some on Capitol Hill praised the president's decision.
Sounded like a very prudent and very low-risk operation, and I think it does protect American lives.
It's not a show of force, it's a protection of American lives and interests.
At least 5,000 people have died since this war began, and as the battles rage on, so does the suffering. For the first time in history, Liberia joins the list of African countries facing serious food shortages, and some say the problems have only just begun.
That's a nation that is pulling itself apart.
For the Week in Review, I'm Don Miller.
In South Africa this week, the Anti-Apartheid African National Congress and the Pretoria government reached an historic compromise. The ANC agreed to immediately end its guerrilla war against the government, and Pretoria agreed to make a number of reforms, including the repeal of some security laws. However, the Pretoria Minute, as the accord is called, was criticized by extremists on both sides of the issue and seemed to exacerbate violence in the black townships.
After 29 years of armed struggle against the South African government and only 16 hours of talks with government officials, the African National Congress announced a ceasefire this week.
We have declared for the suspension, in favor of the suspension of armed action with immediate effect.
The announcement marked a turnaround for the anti-apartheid leader. For 27 years, Mandela remained in prison rather than renounce the use of violence when necessary to bring about political change in his country. His eventual release from prison in February did not change his mind, nor did a meeting with President Bush at the White House during the U.S. tour in June.
I call on all elements in South African society to renounce the use of violence and armed struggle, break free from this cycle of repression and violent reaction that breeds nothing but more fear and suffering.
If we are forced to resort to violence, it is because we had no other alternative whatsoever.
The announcement this week of the change in the ANC's agenda was met with skepticism and suspicion by both black and white extremists. The militant Pan-Africanist Conference, which broke away from the ANC and operates a military wing, said it would not abide by the agreement. The leader of the white supremacist Conservative Party said he did not trust the motives of the ANC.
They use the term ceasefire. Ceasefire indicates that it is something temporary. It is temporary in view of a possible settlement on various issues. And they want a settlement on very important issues, a settlement on the question of power, not the sharing of power. They want the surrender of power.
Government officials say talks on ending white minority rule in South Africa could begin as early as next year. In the meantime, the government agreed to release hundreds of political prisoners and grant amnesty to some 20,000 ANC exiles. In addition, the government agreed to end the state of emergency in Natal province when the area is calmer. Vicious fighting in that province between the Zulu Inkatha movement and the United Democratic Front, which is aligned with the ANC, has claimed an estimated 4,000 lives in the past 4 years. The violence is spreading to other areas. In Kagiso Township this week outside Johannesburg, 11 people died in a power struggle between Inkatha and ANC supporters. Hundreds were left homeless. The ANC accuses security forces in Kagiso and other areas of openly supporting the Inkatha movement. A key plank in the accord reached this week urges the government to do more to control security forces and end attacks on blacks by white police.
The actions of the police indicate to us that the government has not succeeded in restraining police activity. We feel quite dissatisfied with the manner in which state organs are involved in the violence that is taking place.
The police must at all times deal with all problems in an even-handed manner.
If the government doesn't meet the ANC's demands, Mandela says the group will renew its armed struggle. However, neither side wants that to happen.
We think that what has happened forms an important turning point, which will in all probability result in a much more peaceful situation in South Africa.
For the Week in Review, I'm Chuck Roberts.
Coming up on the Week in Review, who killed President John F. Kennedy?
This week, a Dallas man added yet another conspiracy angle, one that triggered a response from the CIA.
I mean, who wants to eat bait?
Wasn't he the guy that got his head cut off? What are crumpets?
Come on, you whip, come on.
We don't have it because you don't want it. At Days, what we do have are great rooms, great value, at over 1,000 great locations. And that's the honest truth.
Day after day, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., you can save an additional 25% on AT&T long distance. So you get a bigger discount during the best time to call. And you can keep on saving 24 hours a day. It's all possible with the AT&T Reach Out America plan. But that's not all. The plan also gives you a 10% daytime discount, plus an hour of weekend and night calls, and it costs just $8.70 a month. Call 1-800-356-3311 for the AT&T Reach Out America plan. The plan also includes an international discount at no extra charge. You can even get an option to let you save on calls away from home. Call 1-800-356-3311 and save on quality AT&T long distance day and night.
Tonight on CNN World Report, another rip in the Iron Curtain, the Soviet KGB kick around with former foes in Norway, and culinary artwork, how tradition and culture shape Mexican cuisine. On CNN World Report, midnight Eastern tonight.
A Dallas man this week claimed the CIA hired his father and two others to assassinate President John F. Kennedy.
The CIA says the claim is ludicrous, and the FBI dismisses the story as previously discredited. But legions of conspiracy theory buffs are all ears.
Cameras were recording the fatal moments when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated while on a political fence-mending visit to Dallas, Texas, in the fall of 1963. Every frame on the film has been examined in detail. Hundreds of witnesses have been questioned in depth, and thousands of leads have been tracked down and checked out. The Chief Justice of the United States headed a lengthy, in-depth investigation that concluded the president was assassinated by a chronic misfit, Lee Harvey Oswald, who acted alone and on his own initiative. But that verdict was questioned even before it was announced in 1964. New questions and new answers have multiplied ever since.
There was a firing squad in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. Beyond a reasonable doubt that Roscoe Anthony White was one of the members of that firing squad.
Roscoe White was a Dallas police officer at the time of the assassination. White's son, Ricky, now an unemployed oil equipment salesman, was 2 years old in 1963. Now Ricky White is saying his father was hired by the Central Intelligence Agency as part of a team to kill the president.
He was told by our government to do so. That would be just like you being in the Vietnam War and they handed you a rifle to take that hill. You don't question the government.
Ricky White says his father served in the Marines with Oswald, who was part of the conspiracy, but did not fire any shots. White says his father shot at Kennedy from the famous grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza.
He was one of three men that fired shots. Kennedy was hit 3 times, one in the back from the book depository, 2 from the front from the grassy knoll. My father had shot a throat shot and the fatal head wound.
Ricky White bases his story on conversations with his father and mother and on his father's diary and notes. He says it was his father who killed police officer J.W. Tippit and not Lee Harvey Oswald, who was charged with that murder. He also says his mother worked for Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby, who killed Oswald. Roscoe White's diary is missing, and Ricky White implies the FBI took it.
It's something that I would not share with anybody else besides myself. When I found the diary, that it was a shocking, most incredible thing that one individual in this room could ever think. Because this guy never gave the impression of being a bad guy.
Ricky White revealed all this at the JFK Assassination Center, dedicated to investigating conspiracy and cover-up theories. His financial backers also revealed that they've discussed movie rights to the story with a leading film producer. The CIA departed from a no-comment policy to vehemently deny any role in the assassination and deny that Roscoe White was ever on its payroll. The FBI said the Roscoe White allegations were reviewed and discredited several years ago. A congressional committee concluded in 1978 that Kennedy was killed by gunmen firing from 2 locations and that the assassination was probably a conspiracy. Other authorities dispute those findings, but conspiracy theories refuse to go away.
People want to believe this story. They want to believe it's a conspiracy, and they're going to believe it. This one, some others, there are over 300 of them now, and so I guess everybody had a little fun out of it.
Like the eternal flame burning over President Kennedy's grave, the mystery of who killed him and why continues to burn in the imaginations of many. For the Week in Review, I'm Bobby Batista.
The new Ford Escort wagon makes such a big statement in terms of new design and engineering. The experts were compelled to make a big statement of their own. The new Ford Escort. Only the name remains the same.
When I want a lightly sweet cookie, I eat a honey-made graham from Nabisco. But when I want a crisp and crunchy cracker, I eat a honey-made graham. But when I want something wholesome with natural honey, like a cookie, that's when I eat a honey-made graham. And when I want something crackling like a cracker, I eat a honey-made graham. But you know, sometimes I want a juicy steak, so I eat a steak. And then I eat
honey-made grahams, a crunchy cracker, a honey of a cookie, and low fat, too.
From the cafes of Paris comes the inspiration for a different kind of mustard. Grey Poupon Parisian. Created especially for sandwiches, its distinctive flavor gives even the simplest foods a sophisticated accent.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon Parisian?
But of course. Grey Poupon Parisian mustard, another of life's finer pleasures.
From the director of Twin Peaks comes this summer's wildest love story, David Lynch's Wild at Heart. Newsweek calls it spectacular and funny. USA Today says it's a must-see. David Lynch's Wild at Heart. Rated R. Starts Friday, August 17th.
As you watch this, games are being won and records broken. To find out how and why, you need the latest in sports at 20 minutes into each half hour, only on Headline News.
At the Gallery of Art in Atlanta, the paintings and drawings of Andre Seifel are on display.
Seifel's unique style is manifested through his ability to blend and control the media in which he works.
When I paint, I have to have a lot of music, a lot of different sounds, and just listening to the sound, I become the music, and I see a lot of different colors, and that's usually where I create a lot of pieces from. That piece is really me. It's called Colors of the Hunt, and it's about a warrior. He has a mission, and each color that is on his face represents something close to him. Each time he puts it on, it means that he has a goal, and no matter what it takes, I'll get it done. When I was little, growing up in a small town, my little sister, she had a doll, and she always carried the doll with her everywhere she went. And I wanted to create a different feel, a different era, if you will, and she would always jump, and that's what the name of the piece is called, Jumping for Joy. Most of the abstracts are from just different emotions, different feelings. Color to me is just so important. And the majority of the time, if I'm going to create an abstract, it's usually with different sounds of music, and it's just rushing and rushing, and I'll try to splash it on or brush it real fast or just flow with the music.
The art of Tennessee native Andre Safel on display in Atlanta.
Coming up, a call to arms.
Hey, Extra Strength Maalox Plus just won a nationwide taste test.
That's no surprise. Maalox has come out with great tasting flavors.
Our cherry cream, mint cream, and lemon Swiss cream flavors beat the other leading liquid antacids on taste.
That's logical. Maalox has very smooth tastes.
Today you can have the best tasting antacid and the strongest too. Extra Strength Maalox Plus. When do you use it?
For all your Maalox moments.
When the sun has worked its magic and the fruit is at its best, it's picked for Smucker's Simply Fruit, 100% fruit, pure, spreadable fruit. Just about the closest thing to fresh fruit you'll ever taste.
Now get the Christian Science Monitor, the Pulitzer Prize-winning daily newspaper for 1 month free when you order 2 months at just $9 per month. Call now and get a bonus month absolutely free. Call 1-800-257-1257 now.
A crisis in the Gulf threatens world peace. Tensions are running high, and the powder keg could explode at any moment. For the latest developments and how they will affect you, stay tuned for continuous live coverage only on CNN.
And Monday's weather is going to show some showers moving up into the Four Corners states once again. Also, more showers following a cold front moving into the northeast. Some possibly severe weather will be forming over the southern plains Monday afternoon. And also, scattered showers and thunderstorms will be forming over the Florida peninsula and the southeast by Monday afternoon as well. As far as temperatures for the beginning of the week, possibly some more record breakers moving into the western part of the United States from the desert southwest all the way up into the state of Washington. Cooler for the Great Lakes states, highs in the 70s, moving up into northern New England, hot and humid 90s for the southeastern part of the country. Here's a look at some specific forecasts.
American troops executed with precision their departure for the Middle East this week, off to a war, a conflict, a standoff. They knew not which, but they went. And their families hoped for the best, a safe return.
He's on the dark side. Got it all? That's it.
Chapter.